early in my career as a pastor, I was at a church within a rural conservative culture. And the older generation of this community had certain cultural values that came from their upbringing. And as we all tend to do, they made morals out of their values. They're two different things, y'all. Now, one of these men came up to me to tell me all about his recent vacation to Florida and how wonderful of a time he had playing shuffleboard. And his eyes were lit up as he's telling me about how it was good Christian fun. No chewing, no drinking, no smoking, no cussing, and no spitting. Okay, I had heard of all the other cultural taboos being wrapped up in Christianity, but the no spitting was a new one for me. Turns out in the Middle Ages, spitting was really common and expected. People just did it because they did it. And then in the 1800s in Western culture, it started to become unpopular for social etiquette and isolated to bars with the classic spittoons for tobacco chewers. Thus, it then became associated with bars, tobacco, drinking, and other things that, quote, Christians don't do. But actually, many Orthodox Eastern Christians spit on the devil for their liturgy of baptism. So at least 14% of all Christians worldwide spit in church for liturgy, which is weird. Purdue University actually holds an annual cricket spitting event to see who can spit a dead cricket the farthest. That's kind of gross. And then there's this county in Ireland that has a festival called Lady of the Lake, where the contestants compete in spitting sheep poop pellets. Oh, that's gross, I know. So I have to say, culture informs the way we see spitting. So when you hear this passage about Jesus spitting on the ground and making clay and spreading it on some dude's eyes, keep that in mind, because it's gonna be kind of like, ew, gross for us. But his culture gonna have some different things going on. Now, a few times Jesus uses his spit for the purpose of healing. In Mark 7, Jesus heals a deaf mute by putting his fingers into the man's ears, spitting, and then touching the man's tongue, and then commanding, be opened. Okay, that is weird and gross to me, but another culture, right? Later in Mark 8, Jesus healed a man's blindness by spitting into his eyes and then placing his hands on them. Another way that's like really gross. And then we have today's passage in John. And for me, I wonder how much spit did it take to make enough mud to cover the man's eyes? And how long did it take to do that? Was it awkward? Was the guy hey guys, what's Jesus doing? And the disciples are looking at Jesus just spitting on the ground repeatedly, making mud, or just didn't want to say anything? I don't know. But we need to look beyond these details to ask the bigger questions that John is trying to communicate. What message was conveyed in this sign that Jesus did? All the miracles of Jesus in the Gospel of John are handpicked and arranged in narrative orders to convey specific messages and meanings. So what was that? Now, a rabbinic text from the day said a person who levels crevices in the ground is liable for performing the forbidden labor of plowing. A person should not spit on the ground and wipe it with his feet, lest crevices be leveled. So that was like a Sabbath day rule. You're not allowed to spit on the ground and level things out, because then you were guilty of plowing. Weird, I know, but Jesus is able to do a very holy task, heal a man born blind. And he does this holy task by violating the accepted religious traditions and practices of the day, revealing it as powerless and empty. So any religion that is only about blind morality produces blind followers, is what Jesus is trying to convey here. But a spirituality that is about waking up will produce sight and awareness. That is one of the messages of this passage. Who is really the one who can't see? The religious ones hostile to the action of God do so because they cannot see outside of their little box that they've placed God inside of. So it's helpful to remember that a religious elite comes to Jesus at night with the confession that they all believe Jesus is from God, yet they try to kill him anyways. That's how John starts off in chapter 3. Nicodemus, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Now, we all tend to resist change and disruption in favor of maintaining stability and turn a blind eye to the invitations from God to expand our awareness and see things new. Now, Lent is a time to repent of our resistance to change and life and open ourselves up to something new and life-giving. It's a time to fast from our autopilot routines and see if a new path reveals itself to us, one we may have missed otherwise.